The Navy said it couldn't be done. Engineers laughed, but one nobody in a shipyard garage proved them wrong, and his invention built the U.S. fleet that won the war. March 1941, Mare Island Naval Shipyard, Vallejo, California. The hiss of acetylene torches filled the air, echoing across the cavernous submarine construction bay. Sparks leapt like fireflies, scattering across the steel hulls of half-finished boats. Edward Nelson, a 36-year-old welder earning 11 a day, stood amid the chaos, frustration etched on his face. Beneath the scaffolded decks, men twisted their bodies through tight spaces, threading bolts in suffocating compartments. Hours of labor went into fastening a single plank of wood to a steel frame. "Watching it all," Nelson muttered under his breath. "There has to be a better way." He wasn't wrong. What he saw was madness. A process outdated by decades, strangled by bureaucracy and routine. The Navy demanded faster work, yet refused to change how things were done. Beneath the decks of submarines, teams of men labored for days, building and tearing down miles of scaffolding just to install wooden planking. Every bolt, every nut, every plank took hours. It was the same way they had done it since World War I, slow, dangerous, and wasteful. And as clouds of war gathered over the Pacific, America no longer had time to waste. Ted Nelson wasn't a college graduate or an engineer. He was a California-born machinist who had learned by doing 15 years in machine shops. 15 years understanding how metal behaved, how electricity flowed, and how problems could be solved if someone just listened. What no Navy officer knew that day in 1941 was that this frustrated welder already held the solution that would save more than 50 million man-hours and revolutionize naval construction forever. Mare Island was an ordinary shipyard. Established in 1854, it was the Navy's first base on the Pacific, sprawling across 600 acres north of San Francisco. By 1941, it had become America's premier submarine yard, working day and night as war loomed closer. 12,000 civilians filled docks and warehouses, pounding steel and welding hulls, a number that would swell to 50,000 before the war's end. Among them was Ted Nelson, employee number 3872, a quiet, relentless man who noticed what others ignored. The Navy insisted on wooden decks, quieter underfoot, warmer than steel, easier to repair, but their installation method was painfully slow. Holes were drilled, bolts inserted, scaffolds built and torn down, workers above and below coordinating in claustrophobic spaces. It could take 12 men a full week to complete a submarine deck. Nelson knew there had to be a faster way. He envisioned a process that eliminated scaffolding altogether. What if instead of bolting wood from above and below, you could weld small studs directly to the steel framework from one side only? He remembered seeing an early form of stud welding, a method using flux powder to fuse a bolt to steel. But it only worked on flat horizontal surfaces. Gravity ruined everything else. Nelson's genius was simple yet profound. Encase the flux in a small ceramic cap so it wouldn't fall off, no matter the position, with aspirin-loaded welding gun. One pull of the trigger could fuse a threaded stud to any surface. Vertical overhead. It didn't matter. 1 second per stud. No scaffolding, no nuts, no bolts, no wasted days. Nelson sketched the idea in his notebook and took it to his superiors. The Navy officers barely looked at it. "We follow procedures," one told him curtly. Another dismissed him outright. If it was that easy, someone would have done it already. His idea was rejected because he was just a welder, not an engineer, not an officer. Even when he filed a formal proposal to the shipyard commander, the response was a form letter. It thanked him for his interest and said it would take 18 to 24 months for Washington to review. With them, the war might already be lost. That night, Nelson made a decision that would change history. If the Navy wouldn't build it, he would. In the small garage behind his cottage in Vallejo, he cleared space, gathered scrap steel, and began working in secret. His wife, Emma, worried he'd lose his job. "This will help the Navy," he told her. "They just don't know it yet." Weeks passed. Sparks filled the garage as he tinkered with different designs. A pistol grip handle, a spring plunger, an electrical trigger, and most critically, a ceramic flux cap. By May 1941, he had a working prototype. It worked perfectly on every surface, heterid, horizontal, vertical, overhead, welding each stud in less than a second. When he showed it to fellow welders at lunch, they were astonished. "This will save us days of work," one exclaimed. But Nelson's supervisors still refused to listen, so he quit. On June 20th, 1941, Ted Nelson walked out of Mayor Island for good. "I'm going to build welding guns," he told his boss. "And when the Navy comes back to buy them, I hope you remember this conversation." With $11 in his pocket and unshakable conviction, he founded the Nelson Specialty Welding Equipment Corporation. On July 1st, 1941, he borrowed $95,000 from a government loan program and began producing his invention in a tiny workshop. At first, no one cared. Most shipyards ignored him, but a few tried his gun, and the results spoke for themselves. Then came December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. Overnight, shipbuilding became the nation's highest priority. Submarines, destroyers, carriers all needed faster construction. And suddenly, Ted Nelson's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Orders poured in. Kaiser Shipyards bought 50 guns. Bethlehem Steel wanted 40. Even Mayor Island, where he had once been ignored, placed an urgent order. By early 1942, Nelson's factory couldn't keep up. He expanded to a new facility in San Leandro, south of Oakland. By year's end, his small team had grown to 150 workers, producing 30 guns a day and thousands of flux-capped studs. Every shipyard on the West Coast was now using Nelson stud welders, and the results were extraordinary. Submarine deck installation that once took 6 days now took 1. 3 workers could do what once required 12. No scaffolding, no wasted labor. The Navy calculated millions of man-hours saved. By late 1942, Nelson's welds were proven to be stronger than traditional bolts. The Bureau of Ships, once skeptical, now sent a delegation to his plant. The officers presented Nelson with citation for exceptional contribution to the war effort. He had done what bureaucracy could not, turned an idea into a revolution. Within 2 years, stud welding was everywhere on submarines, destroyers, cruisers, and the massive Essex-class aircraft carriers. Each carrier used around 20,000 studs. The process saved the Navy an estimated 50 million man-hours, allowing the U.S. to build ships at an unprecedented pace. Shipyards that once struggled to complete a vessel in 18 months were now launching submarines every 11 days. Port South Naval Shipyard launched 4 submarines in a single day in 1944, a record still unmatched. The impact rippled across the entire war. Liberty ships, the workhorses of Allied logistics, relied on Nelson studs for deck fittings and gun mounts. America built 2,110 of them, 3 ships every day at the height of production. The United States Navy expanded from 7 carriers in 1941 to 99 by 1945. A fleet that dominated the Pacific and brought Japan to its knees. Every day saved in construction meant ships in the water faster, more men surviving, and victory arriving sooner. In May 1943, Nelson's company received the Army-Navy E Award for excellence in production, a rare honor given to only the top 5% of war suppliers. His workers were celebrated as heroes of industry, earned 2 stars on the award banner for maintaining production excellence through the rest of the war. The Navy's final report credited his invention with saving over 50 million man-hours, the equivalent of 19,000 years of work. But perhaps just as significant was who used his invention. As labor shortages grew, women flooded into shipyards. Rosie the Riveter became a national symbol, and among them were thousands of Wendy the welders. Stud welding required little training, making it ideal for new workers. At Mare Island alone, 9,000 women took up torches and guns, welding studs that held together the decks of the ships that would win the war. When peace came in 1945, Nelson's company faced a new challenge: survival. The war was over. Contracts were cancelled and factories went quiet. But Nelson had already begun adapting his technology for peacetime industries, construction, bridges, pressure tanks, and later automobiles. His company thrived in the post-war boom. In 1950, he sold it to TRW, ensuring the Nelson name lived on. Over the decades, his inventions spread across every corner of modern industry. Stud welding became essential for building skyscrapers, bridges, and cars. The technology evolved computerized controls, robotic arms, precision electronics. But the principle remained unchanged. One stud, one flux cap, one spark, 1 second. Today, the same Nelson processes used in factories, power plants, and construction sites around the world, even historic ship restorations like the battleship. Texas and the submarine USS Pampanito rely on modern Nelson equipment to repair the very vessels his innovation once helped build. Ted Nelson lived to see it all. When he passed away in 1994 at age 89, he left behind a legacy not of warfare, but of creation. His story isn't about battlefields or medals. It's about persistence, about one man who refused to accept no for an answer. The Navy officers who once dismissed him couldn't see what he did. That innovation often begins not in laboratories or boardrooms, but in the hands of workers who believe they can do better. 50 million man-hours saved, thousands of ships built, countless lives preserved, all from one simple idea. Born in a garage, sparked by frustration and welded into history, Ted Nelson didn't fight the war with bullets or bombs. He fought it with brilliance, with stubbornness, and with a welder's torch. And in doing so, he helped win.